Hello guys and welcome back to another video. Today we will cover an amazing game between the two American grandmasters Wesley and Hikaru Nakamura. It's the semi-final of the Chess.com Rapid Chess Championship and it's actually the last week before the finals. So let's go ahead and see what happened in this game. Wesley is playing with white and he starts with e4, e5 by Nakamura, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to c4 going for the Italian game. Knight to f6 by Hikaru, and now you have the option to go knight to g5 in order to target the f7 pawn. But here after d5, e capture on d5, knight to a5 hitting the bishop, bishop to b5 check, c6, d capture on c6, b capture on c6, bishop back to e2 for example, and now h6, kicking the knight away, knight to h3, and now bishop to e7, and we can see in this position that white is up a pawn, but black has a lot of activity, and this is still a complex position and definitely playable for both sides. But here Wesley simply played d3 and defends his pawn on e4. Bishop to c5 by Nakamura, and now short castle. d6, c3, and now black goes a3 in order to put his bishop back on a7. And here white can try a lot of ideas. For example, he can go b4 to kick the bishop away and then play a4 and take as much space as possible on the queen side. But here Wesley chooses another approach and he goes rook to e1. Black goes h6, controlling g5, and now knight to b to d2. Bishop back to a7, bishop back to b3, short castle, and now knight to f1. And this is a very typical maneuver in this type of structures. White now has the possibility to put his knight on g3 or simply play bishop to e3 and exchange this strong bishop on a7. Rook to e8 by Nakamura and now h3. Bishop to e6 and now Wesley goes bishop to c2, avoiding the trade of bishops. d5 trying to strike in the center, e capture on d5 and knight capture on d5. Knight to g3, queen to d6 and now knight to h4. White wants to control the f5 square, rook on a to d8 and now knight to f5. Bishop capture on f5 and knight capture on f5. The queen is attacked and Hikaru goes queen to f6, queen to g4, and now white's threat is to capture on h6, and you cannot capture with the pawn because of the pen, and black simply goes h5. And here you cannot capture on h5 because black will go g6, and after knight to h6 check, king to g7, queen back to e2, knight to f4 hitting the queen, queen to f3. Now black can safely capture the knight. So here instead Wesley offered the queen trade, which Nakamura accepted. And now f6, bishop back to d2, and g6. Knight back to g3, and now king to g7, keeping all the pawns safe. a4 by Wesley, trying to create some play on the queen side. Knight to f4, bishop capture on f4, and e capture on f4. The knight is attacked, so knight to e4, and black here goes rook to e7. Black is intending to double the rooks on the e file, and white here goes d4, trying to block this bishop. Rook on d to e8, and now king to f1, defending the rook on e1. And here Nakamura calculates a very interesting move, which immediately liquidates the position, but the problem is that the resulting endgame is still drawn, but it's a little bit unpleasant for black. And we're going to see that in a moment. Here Wesley simply captured on d4. And the point here is that after c capture on d4, knight to b4 hitting the bishop, rook to c1 defending, and now knight capture on c2. Rook capture on c2, and we can see that the knight here on e4 is loose. Rook capture on e4, rook capture on c7, rook to d7, rook capture on d7, and rook capture on d7. And here we can see that black has doubled pawns on the f file, and the white has this isolated pawn on the d file, but also it's a pass pawn. And of course this endgame is still drawn, but it's not always easy to prove it, especially in a 10-minute game. Here white goes rook to d1, king to f7, d5, and now rook to e4, d6, and now you cannot capture this pawn, simply because d7 will win. So here you have to go king to e8 in order to block the pawn. d7 and now king to d8. And here Wesley simply goes b3 defending the pawn on a4. Black goes rook to e6, stopping white from infiltrating on the 6th rank. And now h4. g5, h capture on g5, and f capture on g5. Rook to d5 and now rook to b6. Rook capture on g5, rook capture on b3, and rook capture on h5. f3 by Nakamura, g capture on f3, and rook capture on f3. rook to d5 defending the pawn, and now b5. A capture on b5, and a capture on b5. King to e2 hitting the rook, and rook back to f6. Rook capture on b5, rook to e6 check, king to f3, and now king capture on d7. And here we reach a position where white is up a pawn, but the position is still drawn. But this is not enough, you still have to make moves, and with time trouble it becomes a little bit tricky. Here Wesley goes king to f4, rook to e2 attacking the pawn, and king back to f3, rook back to e6, and now rook to b4, rook to f6 check, and now rook to f4. And obviously if you trade rooks, the resulting endgame is lost. So here Nakamura goes rook to h6, rook to e4 by Wesley, and now we can see that the black king is cut off on the e5. Rook to f6 check, king to g3, and now rook to g6 check. And this turned out to be a decisive mistake, and we're going to see why in a moment. Here what you should do as black is to go rook to f8. And the point here is that after f4, you simply go rook to e8. And now if white trades, this is simply a dead draw, simply because after king to g4, now you go king to f8. And if white goes king to f5, you simply take the opposition, and this is a draw. And also if white goes king to g5, you simply go king to g7, again taking the opposition, and this is a draw. And of course here white is not obligated to trade rooks, but the point of this move rook to e8 is that if white removes his rook, now you go king to e6. And we can see now that the black king is no longer cut off on the e file. And of course if the black king can stand in front of the pawn, this is a basic elementary draw. But here Hikaru was under time pressure and they simply played rook to g6 check. And now after king to h4, the position is just lost. Here Hikaru played rook to f6, attacking the pawn, and now f4. Rook back to f8, and now king to g5. And we can see that the white king is infiltrating the position. Rook to g8 check, king to h6, rook to g4 trying to stop f5 because the rook is now pinned. But simply here, knight back to h5, and you have to move your rook to g8, and now f5. And it was in this position where Hikaru resigned, because simply white will be able to establish a simple winning Lucena position. For example, here after rook to f8, king to g6, rook to g8 check, now king to f7, position is just lost. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Lucena position and the technique how to win it, I already made a video about it in my channel, and you can simply click on the video you see right now on the screen. And also I'm going to leave the link of the video in the description. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell to get our latest videos. Thank you guys for watching and see you in the next video.